Hey everybody, welcome to Bible class. Can you open a Bible and join me in Hebrews chapter 12? We're asking the question this month, what is worship? And in lesson 1, we went back to Hebrews chapter 12, verse 28. Really important words for us to wrap our minds around. What's going on as we worship? Does it matter how we worship? What is worship? You might remember how the writer of Hebrews chapter 12 verse 28 said, "Thus let us offer to God." God is where we started in lesson 1, the one who is worthy of our worship. Here's where we ended lesson 1. God has defined what is acceptable worship. After all, if he is the one we are worshiping, why wouldn't we listen to him when he tells us what he wants, what he is willing to accept? Here's where we're going in lesson 2. The call, let us offer. Worship isn't something that any of us do by accident. Worship isn't something any of us do without thinking about it. It just kind of happens and our minds are a million miles away. Worship isn't something that someone can do for me or for you. The call is, let us offer. We have to offer to God acceptable worship. And that word offer might make you think of an altar in the Old Testament. If you read Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and so on, you're going to notice there are many, many altars. Altars were places that were built by people in order to offer sacrifices to God. And when we start noticing who built altars, these are some really significant names from our Old Testaments. Noah built an altar to the Lord in Genesis 8. Abraham built an altar to the Lord and called upon the name of the Lord in Genesis chapter 12. His son Isaac built an altar and called upon the name of the Lord in Genesis 26. His son Jacob built an altar and called it God of Bethel, because there at Bethel, God had revealed himself to Jacob. Moses in Exodus chapter 17 verse 15 built an altar and called the name of it, "The Lord is my banner." In fact, God used Moses to teach the entire nation of Israel all about altars. Read it with me from Exodus chapter 20, verse 22, where the Lord said to Moses, "Thus you shall say to the people of Israel, you have seen for yourselves that I've talked with you from heaven. You shall not make gods of silver to be with me, nor shall you make for yourselves gods of gold." Remember, lesson 1, there is only one worthy of our worship. Here's how he teaches those Old Testament people to worship. "An altar of earth you shall make for me, and sacrifice on it your burnt offerings and your peace offerings, your sheep and your oxen, in every place where I cause my name to be remembered." Remember how we started. Let us offer to God acceptable worship. And I want you to notice what God promised these people when they took that call seriously. "I will come to you, and I will bless you." Now, if you know anything about the Old Testament, of course, you know eventually there was a bronze altar built outside of the tabernacle and then the temple, and there were many, 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 many sacrifices offered on those very fancy altars. In fact, I'm going to step off the screen, and I just want you to think about the number of Old Testament animal sacrifices. Every 2 days, 2 lambs. Every 7th day on the Sabbath, 2 lambs. The first day of every month, 2 bulls, 1 ram, 7 lambs, 1 goat. Every day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the Feast of Weeks, the Feast of Trumpets, on the Day of Atonement. I want you to look at all of these animals. On the Feast of Booths, look at all of the animals. We start doing a little bit of math, and 1 year's worth of animal sacrifices. Look at all the bulls and rams and goats. Especially look at all of the lambs. When we have 100 years worth of animal sacrifices, look at the number. In fact, when we look at 1,500 years, the length of time where God expected the children of Israel to offer all of these animal sacrifices over and over and over again. 169,000 bulls, 55,000 rams, 28,000 goats, well over 1,000,000 lambs offered to God as a sacrifice. Now, all of this matters when we come to the New Testament and we hear Jesus described as the Lamb provided by God who takes away the sin of the world. We need to talk about that as a class. Why was Jesus described as a lamb? The lamb provided by God. How could this lamb, who was a person, take away the sin of the world? In Hebrews chapter 10 and verse 12, he's described as being offered once for all time as a single sacrifice for sins. Now, before I kick it over to your in-person class teacher, let me make one connection to me and to you, because it's one thing to hear all about sacrifice, but what does that have to do with our worship today? Let's end in Romans chapter 12 and verse 1, where Paul says to Christians, I appeal to you by the mercies of God to present your bodies. Back then, people would present a lamb. Here we're being called to present our bodies as living sacrifices. God doesn't expect any of us to lay down on an altar and be killed as a literal sacrifice, but we are being called to present our bodies to God as living sacrifices. This is acceptable to God. Do you remember where we began? Thus, let us offer to God acceptable worship with reverence and awe. And here is Paul saying in Romans chapter 12 and verse 1, when we present our bodies as living sacrifices acceptable to God, this is our spiritual worship. So we need to talk about sacrifices then and now, as we continue to learn what is worship. Thanks so much for being in class tonight. Hope I've set you up for good discussion, that you have a good rest of your class and a good rest of this week.